I've been face to face with Suge with guns drawn.
Right.
On both sides.
Yeah.
And I held my own. And from that day forward, it was nothing but respect with Suge.
I mean, I was in a deposition with Suge Knight, and I had my hands on my face like this, right? And the lawyer was sitting with Suge sitting right there.
The man you saw there, that's Suge Knight. By the early 2000s, his name already struck fear in hip-hop, and not just from his death row days. He was the type of guy who showed up and the whole room got quiet.
They was not scared of Suge Knight. They was terrified of Suge Knight.
But one night in 2005, Suge entered a glamorous event hosted by Kanye West, and it almost got him killed. Before it all went down, the tension had already been bubbling. Kanye had dropped his debut album and slipped in a subtle jab at Suge. Nothing loud, but enough to be noticed.
Right. If somebody else writing your rhymes, if you telling somebody else's story, that really don't mean nothing.
At the same time, The Game, known for speaking his mind, let off a few bars aimed straight at Suge too.
Last but not least, my gangsta from Compton, always in and out of jail.
That's all it took. Suge wasn't the type to laugh off disrespect. He handled beef the only way he knew how, with presence, pressure, and threats that didn't stay just words for long. Suge had his eyes on Kanye, on The Game, and then came that night.
Hey, on the West Coast, hey, I'ma tell you like this, homeboy. You fuck with all on the West, they get twisted. Come with us,
Suge pulls up to Kanye's event, dressed to impress, but carrying decades of tension on his shoulders. Crowds were moving, cameras flashing. And then, a gunshot rings out and all hell breaks loose. And just like that, Suge Knight, the man who was feared by nearly everyone, was bleeding out on the floor. Now, let's rewind and break down how it got this far. So if we take it back to 2005, everybody knows the East Coast and West Coast beef had pretty much died down by then, but even with all that cooling off, Suge Knight was still doing what he did best, terrorizing the industry like it was the 90s all over again, only this time he got a taste of his own poison. It all went down at a party hosted by Kanye West to celebrate the MTV Video Music Awards that had just wrapped up. A-list celebs pulled up heavy. Former G-Unit rapper The Game was in the mix, along with a few other familiar faces.
How's it going, man? Hey, congratulations on the Frog All-Stars, man. I've been following you guys on Instagram.
Tonight ain't the night, man.
Hey, so do you think the Frog All-Stars will produce NBA talent?
Now, you might be wondering what Suge was even doing at a Kanye party, especially considering the weird energy that had been between them before. But things didn't stay chill for long. Word on the street is Suge pulled up deep, like 60 gangsters deep, and went straight for The Game, trying to press him about something he said in a song. The Game broke it down himself. Suge wanted to press me for something I said in my song about him, which I said because I'm from Compton. I'm really from Compton, and I felt like Death Row Suge. And that whole era took so many lives that didn't get mentioned in the city. A couple of those were friends and big homies. So, I said a few things about Suge that he didn't like, and they rolled up on me.
And like Suge rolled up on me one time at the Vibe after the Vibe Awards after party with like 60 gangsters, and he wanted to press for something I said in my song about him.
The track he's talking about is My B, a raw one where The Game didn't hold back. He went at 50 Cent, Jay-Z, and Suge Knight, dedicating a verse to each of them. But when it came to Suge, he didn't just throw jabs, he went for the knockout. Last but not least, my gangsta B from Compton, always in and out of jail and ish. B tried to burn Snoop, stole Chronic from Doc, blew the whole West Coast, even tried to F-pack. Type of B to stand on Beverly Hills. Word on the street she got a few real N killed. I look up now she on my D, telling me how she always gonna be my B.
But not least, my gangsta from Compton, always in and out of jail.
And he wasn't done yet. He kept throwing shade. Talked about how Suge kept showing up at award shows, always following him around, doing dumb stuff, even though he supposedly had a college degree. The Game made it clear Suge burned way too many bridges and ended up alone. He closed the verse with some cold bars. No prenup, one N got stuck with her. I was smart, knew always not to F with her. What goes around comes around. Scandalous-ish. Somebody tried to kill that B. burned the bridges, and ain't had one friend left, and that know her called her the devil in that red dress. Now, that moment at the VMA was Suge's best shot, his opportunity to press the game. But then, it didn't go down like he probably expected. The game was only 25 at the time, but he wasn't about to let Suge Knight and a whole mob of gangsters punk him out. He stood his ground, straight up. He said, "I drew my gun on all of them, and I held my own."
Having no type of back down, and I drew my gun on all of them, and I held my own. And from that day forward, it was nothing but respect with Suge.
By the end of the night, the tables had turned. Suge ended up getting shot in the leg, and just like that, the whole thing fizzled out.
It's in the car. Suge Knight's in the sheriff's. Yeah, that's him right there. Where? Right there. Straight ahead.
Nobody got caught for it, nobody talked, and the beef didn't escalate beyond that. But the streets started whispering. Was it a setup? Rumors started flying that maybe Kanye and the Game had orchestrated the whole thing behind the scenes, especially since the Game himself admitted that when Suge got shot, he was actually chilling with Kanye.
I'm not the one that, fired the shots. I happened to be talking to Kanye at the time I heard the gunshot.
And even after all the madness, the Game didn't act like it was a big deal. That's just who he is. Bold, unfiltered, and always ready to throw a jab or two. I throw jabs sometimes, mainly because I can, and everybody knows I'm an sometimes, so that's just what I do. But time passed, and somewhere down the line, the Game and Suge talked. Suge was already behind bars, and the Game could tell the man had changed. Like prison gave him a chance to slow down and really look at life. I talked to Suge from the inside, and he's got a different perspective on life now, which he should. I mean, where else do you go after being how you used to be? Suge's got to be 50 plus now.
Mainly because I can, and everybody know that, I'm at sometimes, so that's what I do. But I talked to Suge from the inside.
Yeah.
He does have a different perspective on life, and he should have a different perspective.
Their beef got squashed, just like that. The Game even gave him props, acknowledging Suge's impact on the game. You can't take away what he gave. The Tupac albums, the Snoop albums, the whole Death Row era, that was legendary. But here's what most people don't even know. Before all that smoke, the Game and Suge actually had a bit of history. There was a point where the Game almost signed to Death Row. He revealed it in a recent sit-down with Vlad TV. Back then, he was rolling with Suge, Eastwood, Crooked O, and the crew. He saw it all, how things worked on the inside, the energy, the hustle. But in the end, he knew Death Row wasn't for him. He could see the writing on the wall. The label wasn't what it used to be. Tupac was gone. Snoop and others had moved on. And that Death Row magic was fading. He needed something different, a place where he could really thrive. "I felt like I belonged on records," he said, and you could hear the clarity in that statement.
Running around with Suge and Eastwood and my homeboy Sonic for about 2 months, and I figured out this wasn't the place for me. West Coast, young West Coast back then. So we went to the studio a few times, and I watched Crooked I do his thing, murder some I watched Eastwood do his thing and kill some. I just felt like I belonged on records.
Eventually, he got connected with Diddy, who made a genius move and sent the Game to Dr. Dre. And that's when things really started cooking.
And then I started running with Diddy a little bit, and then Diddy, sort of pushed me over to Dre once Dre was ready to sign me, and then, that's where things went.
The rest, as they say, is history. So we have established earlier that Kanye and Suge had some drama going on between them. But to really understand how it all kicked off, you have to rewind. Back in 2002, Kanye was just a hungry kid from Chicago, still grinding behind the scenes. He had just landed a deal with Rockefeller and was making a name as a producer, lacing tracks for Jay-Z, Ludacris, Alicia Keys, and a bunch more. That sound he had, soul samples, chopped vocals, tight drums, it was unique. He was magic behind the boards. But in his heart, Kanye didn't just want to make beats, he wanted the mic. Jay-Z saw the spark. He threw Kanye a shot on Never Change from the Blueprint, and just like that, showed he could spit too. He kept building, producing on the Blueprint 2 and laying the groundwork for something bigger, his own album. Then in 2004, he dropped The College Dropout, and that track hit like an earthquake. Critics loved it. The streets loved it. It was soulful, smart, spiritual, and raw. Tracks like All Falls Down, Jesus Walks, and Through the Wire didn't just slap. They made people listen. Kanye wasn't just another rapper. He was telling his story, and it hit different.
West side, we don't set this party.
By 2005, with late registration, Kanye proved it wasn't a fluke. He took it to the next level: live instruments, orchestral arrangements, big-name collabs with Jamie Foxx, Adam Levine, and even producer John Bryan. He wasn't following anyone's playbook. He was rewriting the whole game. But even with all that success, not everyone was a fan. Some saw him as too commercial, too polished, or just plain egotistical. And then came the feud with Suge Knight, which only added more fire to the story. It started with a lyric. Kanye took a shot at Suge and threw the wire, calling him an a-hole. That was all it took.
Scared as hell that I got look like Emmett Till. He was with me before the deals.
Suge didn't let it slide. He fired back, calling Kanye fake and saying he was just a puppet of the industry. He even threatened him, told him straight up not to set foot in Los Angeles. And when Suge says something like that, we know people pay attention. But Kanye didn't flinch. He kept performing, kept promoting his album, and even clapped back on stage during a Sacramento show, telling Suge to come holler at me if he had a problem. That was bold, especially with Suge's track record. The feud dragged on for years. Suge kept throwing jabs in interviews, trying to shake Kanye's momentum, but Kanye didn't stop. He just kept rising, kept evolving, kept creating. Looking back now, you can see that the tension between them was deeper than just a diss track. It was about ego, power, two completely different approaches to the music industry, one rooted in fear and control, the other in innovation and fearlessness. Kanye's refusal to back down wasn't just about pride. It was about proving he belonged, that he could stand toe-to-toe with the biggest, the loudest, the most feared in the game. And honestly, he did more than stand. He rose above it. Hip-hop has always been a genre built on competition, controversy, and drama. From the early rap battles in the Bronx to the high-profile East Coast versus West Coast rivalry of the 90s, feuds have been a key part of the culture. The Kanye West versus Suge Knight beef is just one example, but it's particularly significant. Not only did it highlight the complex power dynamics in the music industry, but it also showed the often fraught relationship between artists and the record execs pulling the strings behind the scenes. This feud wasn't just about words or lyrics. It was about control, respect, and the battle for creative dominance. Things took an unexpected turn when Suge decided he wasn't over the whole shooting incident yet. In true Suge Knight fashion, he circled back years later. In 2010, he filed a lawsuit against Kanye West and a Miami nightclub for the injuries he sustained in that same shooting back in 2005. No one was ever arrested in connection with the shooting, but it definitely wasn't some random incident. Suge Knight walked away from that night with a shattered femur and over $200,000 in medical bills, according to his lawyer. And just to add fuel to the fire, he claimed he lost a 15-carat diamond earring worth around $135,000 during the chaos. That little detail alone had folks raising eyebrows. But come on, this is Suge we're talking about. Drama follows him like a shadow. His lawyer, Mark Broomer, came out swinging, pointing fingers right at Kanye West and the Miami Beach nightclub that hosted the party. He said they dropped the ball on security. This wasn't some backroom gathering. It was a high-profile pre-VMAs bash, with stars like Jessica Alba and the Black Eyed Peas showing up. Suge is an icon in the music industry, Broomer told the court. He walks into a room and lights it up. He had an expectation of security there. How someone came with a gun into a VIP party, that just doesn't meet the smell test in life. In legal filings, Suge was asking for well over $1 million. That covered the hospital bills, the injury, the lost diamond, and yeah, let's be honest, probably the bruised ego too. According to Suge, a Shore Club employee even told him they'd recover the earring and get it back to him. But it was all talks, because he never heard from them again. At least 6 shots were fired that night, but barely any witnesses came forward. The whole thing turned foggy real fast, and what started as a party turned into another chapter in the long, messy story of hip-hop beef, ego, and power plays. Now, Suge argued in court that Kanye should have known the environment might get dangerous, especially with how raw things were in the industry. There were still heavy shadows hanging from the East Coast versus West Coast wars, and tensions between artists, crews, and executives were always simmering. The Kanye versus Suge feud also shines a light on how music can shape society. Through their rivalry, they inadvertently showcase the power of artistic expression in a world where perception is everything. Despite the heated tension between them, both Kanye and Suge went on to achieve massive success in their respective careers. Kanye became one of the most innovative and influential artists of his generation, while Suge, as the CEO of Death Row Records, carved out his own controversial legacy in hip-hop history. Their clash serves as a reminder of how hip-hop, in all its intensity, whether in feuds, rivalries, or groundbreaking art, remains a cultural force that's impossible to ignore. But Kanye and the game weren't the only ones who had the guts to stand up to Suge Knight. Another name that earned his place in the history books for going toe-to-toe with Suge was Eminem.
I always respected Eminem, 50, and that was with us. So Suge came, he had some Mexican. Now we from New York. You ain't never seen a with a tattoo on his forehead.
When Dr. Dre decided to leave Death Row Records, it was a huge turning point. Dre was done with the label's aggressive image and tired of the East Coast-West Coast drama. His focus was on making music, not getting caught up in industry beefs, which is why he left to start Aftermath Records.
It was mostly just the way the studio was, and that's where I have to spend most of my time. This East Coast, West Coast nonsense is just getting ridiculous, It's just like another form of black-on-black crime.
At first, Aftermath struggled to find its footing, but in 1998, everything changed when Dre signed Eminem, a rapper from Detroit who was about to take the entire music industry by storm. Eminem wasn't just another artist, he was a game changer, and his rise to fame helped elevate Aftermath to global success throughout the 2000s. But to Suge Knight, this felt like a slap in the face. At the time, Death Row was in turmoil. They'd lost Tupac, a key figure behind their success, and the label was spiraling downwards. Suge must have been fuming watching Eminem blow up under Dre's new label. He thought someone as influential as Eminem should have been part of Death Row, not thriving at Aftermath. Suge, being Suge, tried to intimidate Eminem, hoping to either sway him or shake his resolve. But Eminem wasn't your average rapper. He had the Slim Shady alter ego, a wild, often violent character that didn't bow down to anyone, not even the feared Suge Knight. One of the most iconic moments in this saga came at the 2001 Source Awards. Eminem was performing with D12, and things got tense. According to Eminem's former bodyguard, Big Nas, Suge's crew surrounded Eminem, wearing red shirts, a clear sign they were part of the Bloods gang, with strong ties to Suge's inner circle.
I was walking to his seat, I'm standing off to the side, and M was cut off on his way to his seat, and all these guys in red shirts surrounded him. And I'm looking at M's face, and I'm looking at these guys, I'm like, I ain't right.
Eminem found himself trapped in a sticky situation, but Big Nas got to him just in time to get him out of there before things turned ugly. The whole thing was a clear indication of how far Suge was willing to go to assert control in a situation that didn't even involve him directly. That wasn't the end though. Tensions only escalated. A later incident in Hawaii became one of the most intense moments of the feud. According to Big Nas, Suge had sent over 50 of his guys to Hawaii to disrupt a relaxed gathering with Dre, Snoop Dogg, and Eminem. Suddenly, what was supposed to be a vacation turned into a nightmare. Eminem and the crew had to gear up for the worst. Bulletproof vests, firearms, and police escorts were all part of the picture. In fact, Interscope Records had to foot the bill for additional security, even hiring an officer from the Honolulu Police Department to protect them during their stay. The threat was real. The situation was escalating. Big Nas recalled, "We thought it was a vacation, but it ended up being a problem. What was meant to be a getaway became a high-stakes, high-security operation. It was clear that Suge was pulling the strings, and his presence was still a dangerous force even in the face of M's rising success. Despite all of this, Suge publicly claimed that Eminem's music meant nothing to him. But his actions spoke volumes. He was threatened by Eminem's success, and it showed. In the world of hip-hop, everything comes down to respect, control, and power. And Suge Knight wasn't about to let someone else steal the spotlight. Even though now, Suge Knight is somewhere in jail serving his sentence, he left knowing that not everyone was scared of him. And if he ever crossed the line, people would always check him.